"It hurts too much," I whispered, and for a second, I wasn't sure if I meant my ribs, my heart, or the quiet part of me that had been breaking for months without making a sound. The room around me felt too small, like the walls were leaning in, like the air itself had weight, and every breath I took had to fight its way in. I pressed my palm against my side, not hard, just enough to remind myself I was still here, still breathing, still standing, even if it didn't feel like it. The mirror across the room caught my reflection in pieces, the dim light cutting across my face, highlighting the parts one tried not to look at for too long. I reached for the edge of the sink to steady myself, my fingers cold against the porcelain, counting silently. 1, 2, 3. The way I always did when everything felt like too much. Outside, a car passed by, headlights sweeping briefly through the window, and for a second, the room lit up like a flash of truth I wasn't ready to face. I turned away, pulling my sleeve down a little farther even though no one was there to see. It didn't matter. Habits like that didn't need an audience. They lived under your skin, in the spaces no one asked about. I told myself I would leave, that tonight would be the night I finally walked out and didn't look back. I had told myself that before, more times than I could count, but something felt different now. Maybe it was the way my voice had sounded when I said it out loud, fragile, but certain, like the last thread holding everything together had finally snapped. I grabbed my keys from the counter, the metal cool and solid in my hand, something real, something I could hold on to. My heartbeat was loud in my ears as I moved toward the door, each step slow, careful, like the floor might give out if I rushed it. When I stepped outside, the night air hit my skin and I inhaled sharply. It was colder than I expected, or maybe I just wasn't used to feeling anything that clean anymore. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound feel louder. My footsteps, my breathing, the faint hum of distant traffic. I started walking without thinking about where I was going, just away. That was enough. Away from the apartment, away from the voice in my head that kept telling me I couldn't do this, that I wouldn't survive on my own. I wrapped my arms around myself as I moved, not for warmth, but for something like comfort, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't notice the black car at first, parked just off the curb, engine low, almost silent, but I felt it before I saw it, that shift in the air, that subtle awareness that someone was watching, not in a way that made me panic, but in a way that made me pause. I slowed, my steps uneven now, my chest tightening again. I told myself to keep going, to not look, to not stop, but my body didn't listen. It never did when something felt this different, this heavy. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see the outline of the car, sleek, still, out of place on a street like this. And then the door opened, not rushed, not aggressive, just deliberate, like whoever was inside had already decided something long before I ever stepped into view. I froze, not out of fear, but because something in me recognized the moment for what it was, the kind of moment that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that changes things whether you're ready or not. And when he stepped out, the world didn't get louder, it got quieter, like everything else understood it needed to step back, give space. His presence wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It settled into the space around him like it belonged there, like he belonged everywhere he chose to stand. His eyes found mine before I could look away, and for the first time that night, I forgot about the pain, not because it was gone, but because something else had taken its place, something sharper, clearer, like being seen without having to explain anything at all. He did not speak right away, and somehow that silence said more than anything I had heard in months. His gaze moved once, slow and deliberate, from my face to the way I was holding myself, to the slight shift in my posture every time I breathed, and then back to my eyes, like he was putting together a story I had never told out loud. I swallowed, my throat dry. My instinct was to apologize, to explain, to make myself smaller so I would not take up space I did not deserve. But the words stayed stuck somewhere behind my ribs, and for once, I did not force them out. The night stretched between us, quiet, steady, and I became aware of how fast my heart was beating, how my fingers curled slightly into my sleeves like I needed something to hold on to. "Who did this?" he asked finally, his voice low, Even, not demanding, not angry, just certain, like the answer already existed and he was simply waiting for me to confirm it. I shook my head before I could stop myself, a reflex I had learned too well. Deny, deflect, disappear. It is nothing, I said. My voice softer than I intended, almost lost in the space between us. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened, not with suspicion, but with clarity, like he understood the difference between words and truth. He took one step closer, not enough to crowd me, just enough that I could feel the shift in the air again, controlled, intentional. It is not nothing, he said, and there was no force in it, just quiet authority, the kind that did not need to raise its voice to be heard. I looked away first, down at the sidewalk, at the faint crack running through the concrete like a line I had been walking for too long. I should have left, should have kept moving, but my feet stayed where they were, like something in me had decided to wait, just for a moment, just to see what would happen if I did not run. A car passed at the end of the street, its headlights briefly catching the edge of his suit, dark, precise. Everything about him looked like it belonged somewhere far from here. Far from this quiet street and the girl standing in front of him trying to hold herself together. You are not safe, he said, not as a question, not even as a warning, just a fact, and the way he said it made something in my chest tighten again, not out of fear, but because it felt like someone had finally said the thing I had been avoiding. I let out a breath. I did not realize I was holding, my shoulders dropping just slightly, just enough to feel it. I am fine. I tried again, weaker this time, because even I could hear how unconvincing it sounded. His gaze did not waver. You do not have to lie to me, he said. And for a second, I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because I did not remember the last time someone had said that, like it was allowed, like I had the option to tell the truth. The wind picked up, brushing against my skin, and I realized I was cold, not just from the night air, but from everything I had been carrying. He noticed, of course he did. His eyes flicked briefly to my hands, to the way they trembled just enough to give me away, and then back to my face. Come with me, he said. Simple, direct, no explanation attached. Every instinct I had built over the past year told me to refuse, to step back, to protect what little control I still had, but another part of me, quieter, steadier, asked a different question. What if this was the moment I stopped surviving and started choosing something else? I hesitated, just long enough for doubt to try and pull me back, and then I nodded. Once, small, but real. His expression softened, not visibly, but in the way his shoulders relaxed just slightly, like he had expected that answer. He turned without another word, opening the car door with the same controlled ease, waiting, not forcing, not rushing, just giving me space to decide. I stepped forward, each movement slow, careful, like I was crossing a line I could not uncross, and when I sat down inside, the door closing quietly behind me, I realized something that made my chest tighten in a different way, for the first time in a long time. I was not thinking about what might hurt next. I was wondering what would happen if it did not. I did not realize how tense I was until the car began to move, the quiet hum of the engine filling the space where my thoughts had been racing only seconds ago. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, fingers intertwined so tightly they almost ached. Like if I let go I might lose whatever fragile sense of control I still had. The interior smelled clean, subtle, something expensive but not overwhelming, and it felt strangely out of place against the chaos that had been my night. I glanced toward him without turning my head fully, watching the way he drove, steady, precise. Like every movement had already been decided before it happened. There was no hesitation in him, no second guessing, and that alone made me more aware of how much I lived in hesitation, in doubt, in constantly checking what might go wrong next. The city lights passed outside in soft streaks, reflecting briefly across the window before disappearing again, and I found myself following them with my eyes just to avoid looking inward, just to avoid feeling too much at once. Where are we going? I asked after a moment. My voice quieter now, not because I was afraid, but because the silence between us felt like something I did not want to break too harshly. Somewhere safe, he answered, just as calm as before, as if that word meant something concrete, something guaranteed. I let out a slow breath, leaning back slightly into the seat, the softness unfamiliar, my body still half expecting tension, half waiting for something to shift. "You do not even know me," I said, more to myself than to him. But he heard it anyway. "I knew he would. I know enough," he replied, and that should have unsettled me. It should have made me question everything, but instead it landed differently, like he was not claiming ownership, not making assumptions. Just stating what he had already seen. I looked down at my hands again, noticing the faint tremor still there, smaller now, but not gone, and I wondered when the last time was that someone had noticed without asking me to explain it away. The car slowed as we turned onto a quieter street, the noise of the city fading into something softer, more distant, and I felt my shoulders drop just a little more, not fully relaxed, not yet, but closer than before. "You can stop at any time," he said. Suddenly, his eyes still on the road. "If you want to leave, you say it," and I stop. I blinked, caught off guard by the offer, by the way it was given without pressure, without expectation, like the choice was real, like it actually belonged to me. I hesitated. The habit of searching for hidden meaning still there, still strong, but I did not find any, just the steady rhythm of the car, the quiet certainty in his voice. "I am okay," I said after a moment, and this time, it felt different when I said it, not like a defense. Not like something I was trying to convince myself of, but like a small truth I was testing for the first time. He nodded once, almost imperceptible, and did not say anything else. The car came to a stop in front of a building that did not try to draw attention to itself, tall, understated, the kind of place you would pass without noticing unless you were looking for it. He stepped out first, moving around to open my door, the gesture simple, not performative. Just consistent with everything else about him, controlled, deliberate. I stepped out slowly, the ground feeling steadier beneath my feet than it had earlier, though my body still held onto the memory of imbalance, of uncertainty. We walked inside without a word, the lobby. Quiet, softly lit, the kind of place where everything felt contained, like nothing chaotic was allowed to enter, and as the doors closed behind us, I felt something shift again, subtle but undeniable. Like I had crossed into a space where the rules I had been living by no longer applied, and for the first time, that did not terrify me. It made me wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was another way to exist that did not revolve around bracing for impact. The elevator ride was quiet, but it was not empty. I could feel it in the way the air shifted every time he moved, in the soft hum of the cables pulling us upward, in the reflection of us both in the mirrored wall where I barely recognized the girl standing there, my hair slightly out of place, my shoulders still tense, my eyes searching for something I could not name, and beside me, him, still, composed. Like nothing in the world could reach him unless he allowed it. I looked away first, focusing instead on the numbers above the door as they climbed steadily, each floor creating distance between me and everything I had just left behind. I told myself not to think about it, not to replay it, not to question whether I had made the right choice, because for once I did not feel like I was running. I felt like I was stepping into something unknown, and that was different. The doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a hallway that felt more like a private residence than anything else, quiet, clean. The lighting warm but not dim, everything intentional, everything controlled. He stepped out first, waiting just enough for me to follow, not rushing, not guiding me with his hands, just letting me choose to move forward on my own, and I did, my steps slower now, not from fear, but from awareness, like I was noticing everything for the first time, the sound of my shoes against the polished floor, the faint scent of something fresh in the air, the way my breathing had finally started to even out. He stopped in front of a door at the end of the hall, unlocking it with a small, precise movement, and when it opened, I hesitated for just a second, not because I wanted to turn back, but because I realized this was the moment where everything fully shifted, where there was no pretending this was temporary or accidental. He stepped inside first, turning on the lights, and the space revealed itself slowly, a large living area, simple but refined, nothing excessive, nothing chaotic, everything in its place, like the room itself had been designed to keep things steady, To keep things from falling apart, you can stay here, he said. His voice the same calm tone it had been all night, no pressure, no expectation. Attached, just an offer, I stepped inside, the door closing softly behind me, and for a moment, I just stood there, taking it in, the quiet, the space, the absence of tension pressing against my skin. It felt unfamiliar, almost too still. Like my body did not quite trust it yet. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, turning slightly toward him, the question slipping out before I could stop it, not defensive, not accusing, just honest. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and there was something different in his expression now, something quieter, more focused. "Because you needed it," he answered, simple, direct, like that was enough, and maybe it was. Maybe for him it always was. I let that settle for a second, the weight of it landing somewhere deeper than I expected, because no one had ever said something like that without asking for something in return, without attaching conditions, without turning it into a transaction. I moved further into the room, my fingers brushing lightly against the back of a chair, grounding myself in something physical, something real. "There are clothes in the bedroom," he added, gesturing toward a door down the hall, "and anything else you need will be taken care of." I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice just yet. The idea of being taken care of without having to earn it, without having to justify it, felt unfamiliar, almost fragile, like something that could disappear if I questioned it too much. He watched me for a moment longer, not intruding, not hovering, just present, and then he stepped back slightly, giving me space again. "Always space, always that choice. You should rest," he said quietly, and for the first time, I did not resist that suggestion. I did not argue with it or push it away, because the truth was I was exhausted in ways I had not allowed myself to admit, not just physically, but in every part of me that had been holding tension for far too long. I walked toward the bedroom slowly, each step feeling lighter than the last. And as I reached the doorway, I paused, glancing back at him one more time. He had not moved much, still standing where I left him, watching, not in a way that made me feel trapped, but in a way that made me feel seen, and that was something I was still learning how to understand. I stepped inside the room, closing the door gently behind me, and as the quiet settled around me again, I realized something that made my chest tighten in a way that was not painful this time, for the first time in a long time. I did not feel like I had to brace myself for what came next, and I did not know what to do with that yet. I closed the bedroom door gently behind me, the soft click echoing louder than it should have in the quiet, and for a moment I just stood there, my hand still resting against the wood like I needed to confirm it was real, that I was actually here. Not back in that apartment, not standing in that same space, where every sound carried tension. I let out a slow breath and turned, taking in the room piece by piece, the bed neatly made, the soft lighting that did not strain my eyes, the absence of clutter. Everything felt intentional, like nothing in this space existed by accident. I walked further in, my steps careful at first, then a little more certain, like I was testing the ground beneath me and finding it steady. I reached out, brushing my fingers lightly across the edge of the dresser, grounding myself in the texture, the cool surface, something solid that did not shift beneath my touch. My reflection caught in the mirror above it, and I paused, really looking this time, not just a glance, not just avoidance. I looked at the girl staring back at me, at the exhaustion in her eyes, the tension still lingering in the way her shoulders held themselves, and for the first time, I did not immediately look away. I held it, just for a second longer than usual, like I was trying to recognize her again. I moved toward the closet, opening it slowly, and inside were clothes, simple, clean, folded with the same precision I had noticed everywhere else. Nothing excessive, nothing that demanded attention, just there, waiting. I hesitated, my hand hovering for a moment before I reached out, the fabric soft beneath my fingers, unfamiliar but not uncomfortable, and something about that made my chest tighten again, not with pain, but with a quiet kind of disbelief. I changed slowly, each movement deliberate, like I was relearning something basic, something I used to do without thinking, and when I finished, I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress giving slightly beneath my weight, softer than anything I had slept on in a long time. I placed my hands in my lap again, but this time they were not clenched, just resting. Still, I listened, expecting something, a sound, a shift, anything that would tell me this calm was temporary, that it would break like it always did. But nothing came, just silence, steady and unbroken. I lay back slowly, my body stiff at first, not quite trusting the softness beneath me, not quite believing I was allowed to relax into it. My eyes stayed open, tracing the ceiling, counting the seconds between breaths, waiting for the familiar edge of anxiety to creep back in, but it did not come the way it usually did. It lingered at the edges, unsure, like it did not know how to exist in a space like this. I turned slightly onto my side, pulling the blanket closer, the warmth settling around me in a way that felt foreign, almost too gentle, and I realized how long it had been since I had felt something like this without questioning it, without bracing for it to be taken away. My eyelids grew heavier. The exhaustion I had been holding back finally pushing through, not overwhelming, just present, steady. I let my eyes close for a moment, just to see what it felt like, just to test it, and when nothing changed, when the quiet remained, when the air stayed light and the room did not shrink around me, I let them stay closed a little longer, my breathing slowing, my body sinking further into the mattress, and somewhere in that space between waking and sleep, a thought surfaced, quiet but clear. What if this was not something temporary? What if this moment, this stillness, was not something I had to earn or fight to keep? What if it simply existed, waiting for me to accept it? I did not have an answer, not yet, but for the first time, I did not feel the need to find one immediately. And as sleep finally began to pull me under, gentle and unforced, I realized something that settled deep in my chest, something small but undeniable. Tonight, I was not surviving. Tonight, I was resting. I woke up slowly, not with the usual jolt of panic that used to pull me out of sleep like something chasing me, but with a quiet awareness that felt almost unfamiliar. My eyes stayed closed for a few seconds longer, listening, waiting, expecting the tension to rush back in the moment I fully woke up, but it did not. The room remained still, the air light, and my body, for once, did not feel like it was bracing for something unseen. I inhaled deeply, the breath steady, not sharp, not forced. And that alone made me realize how different this morning was. I opened my eyes gradually, the soft light filtering through the curtains, gentle, not harsh, and for a moment I forgot where I was, the unfamiliar ceiling above me, the quiet that did not carry any hidden weight. And then it came back, not as fear, but as memory. I pushed myself up slowly, sitting on the edge of the bed, my feet touching the floor, grounding myself again. I expected the ache to remind me of everything I had tried to ignore, but instead it was distant, present but not overwhelming, like it no longer defined every movement I made. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling softly, and let my gaze move around the room, taking it in again, confirming it had not changed overnight, that this place, this stillness, was real. I stood carefully, testing my balance, and when my body held steady, I felt something shift inside me, something small but undeniable, like I had more control than I thought. I moved toward the door, opening it slowly, the hallway just as quiet as before, the same warm lighting, the same sense of order that made everything feel contained. I stepped out, my movements no longer hesitant, just cautious, aware. I could hear something faint from the other side of the apartment, not noise, not chaos, just presence, and I followed it without thinking too much about why. The living area came into view, and he was there, standing near the window, the morning light catching the edges of his silhouette, his posture relaxed, but not careless, like, even in stillness, he was aware of everything around him. He turned slightly as I stepped closer, his gaze finding mine immediately, and there was no surprise in it. No question. Just recognition, like he had expected me to be there. "You slept," he said, not asking, just observing. I nodded once, my voice still adjusting to the quiet. "I did," I replied, and it felt strange to admit that out loud, like it was something worth noting. something that had not been guaranteed before. His eyes studied me for a brief moment, not intrusive, just certain, like he was measuring something beyond what I could see. "Good," he said simply, and that word settled in a way I did not expect. I moved a little closer, my hands resting loosely at my sides now, no longer gripping onto something invisible. "I did not think I would," I added after a second, and he understood what I meant without needing more explanation. "You will," he said. His tone steady, like it was not a possibility, but a decision already made. I hesitated, the old instinct to question, to doubt, rising slightly, but it did not take hold the way it used to, because something about him made uncertainty feel unnecessary. I glanced toward the window, the city outside already awake, moving, alive, and for the first time, I did not feel like I was trying to keep up with it. I felt like I was standing apart from it, observing, breathing, existing without being pulled under. "You are safe here," he said then, and the words were not dramatic, not heavy, just clear, and I realized that he was not trying to convince me. He was stating something he had already decided. I looked back at him, really looking this time, at the calm in his expression, the control in the way he carried himself, and I understood something that I had not fully grasped before. He did not offer safety as a possibility. He created it as a fact. I nodded slowly, the movement small but grounded, and as I stood there in that quiet space with the morning light stretching across the room, I felt something settle inside me, not fully, not completely, but enough to recognize it, enough to hold on to it, for the first time. I was not waiting for the calm to break, I was beginning to believe it might stay. The silence between us did not feel empty anymore, it felt intentional, like something chosen rather than something left behind. I shifted my weight slightly, my gaze moving across the room again before settling back on him, trying to understand what it meant to stand here without the usual urgency pulling at me, without the need to explain myself or justify why I was still here. "What happens now?" I asked quietly, the question slipping out before I could overthink it. Because for the first time, I was not just reacting, I was looking ahead. Even if I did not know what that looked like yet, he did not answer immediately, his eyes studying me in that same measured way, like he was considering not just the question, but what I was ready to hear. "Now, you decide what you want to keep," he said, and the words caught me off guard, not because they were complicated, but because they were not what I expected. I blinked slightly, my brow tightening just enough to show the confusion I could not hide. "Keep," I repeated, the word unfamiliar in this context. He nodded once, slow, deliberate. "What stays with you? What does not?" he clarified. And something about the way he said it made my chest tighten again, not painfully, but with a kind of awareness I had been avoiding for a long time. I looked down at my hands, turning them slightly as if I might find the answer written there. But all I saw were the faint reminders of everything I had carried for too long, and for the first time, I wondered if I actually had a choice in what stayed. "I do not know how to do that," I admitted, my voice softer now, more honest than it had been in a long time. He stepped a little closer, not enough to close the space between us, just enough that I could feel his presence more clearly. "You already started," he said, and I looked up at him, searching for something to explain that. "You left," he added simply, and the truth of that settled into me slowly, like something I had done without fully realizing the weight of it. I had left, I had walked out. I had stepped away from something that had defined my days for so long that I forgot what it meant to exist outside of it. I exhaled quietly, my shoulders dropping just a little more. "It does not feel finished," I said, because it did not. Because part of me still expected something to follow, something to pull me back. His expression remained steady, unchanged. "It is not," he said, not denying it, not softening it, just stating it as it was, "but it does not control what comes next," and that was the part that lingered, the part that shifted something deeper inside me. Because I had spent so long believing that what happened before dictated everything after, that there was no separation, no space to choose differently, I moved a little closer to the window, my eyes drifting to the city again, watching people move through their routines, their lives continuing without hesitation, and for the first time, I did not feel disconnected from that. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could step back into something like that. Again, what if it follows me? I asked quietly, not turning back, the question carrying more than just words, carrying the fear I had not fully let go of yet. There was a pause behind me, not long, but enough to feel intentional, and then his voice, calm. Certain it will not, he said, and I turned then, because there was something in the way he said it that demanded to be seen, not questioned, not doubted, just understood. How do you know? I asked, because part of me still needed to hear. It still needed something concrete. He met my gaze without hesitation, his expression unwavering. Because I do not allow it, he replied, and there was no arrogance in it, no need to prove anything. Just a quiet certainty that settled into the space between us, and for a moment, I simply stood there, letting that sink in, not fully understanding it yet, not fully trusting it, but feeling the weight of it nonetheless, because for the first time, someone was not asking me to be strong enough to handle what came next. They were telling me I would not have to face it alone, and that was something I was still learning how to accept. His words did not echo. They settled, deep and steady, like something placed exactly where it was meant to be, and I realized I was still looking at him, searching for cracks in that certainty, for hesitation, for anything that would make it feel less absolute. But there was none, just that same controlled calm that had not shifted since the moment he stepped out of that car. I turned back toward the window slowly, not because I was dismissing him, but because I needed a second to process what it meant to hear something like that and not immediately reject it. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, faint against the daylight, and for a moment, I barely recognized the expression on my own face. It was not fear, not quite, and not relief either. It was something in between, something uncertain but open, like a door that had never been unlocked before. I lifted my hand slightly, tracing the edge of the window frame with my fingers, grounding myself again, reminding myself that I was here, that this was real. You speak like everything is already decided, I said quietly, not accusing, just observing, because that was what it felt like he moved through the world without questioning whether things would work out, only deciding how they would. There was a pause behind me, and then his voice, closer now. Though I had not heard him step forward, not everything, he said, and I turned slightly, just enough to see him in my peripheral vision. Only what matters, he added, and something about that made my chest tighten again, but not in the way it used to. Not sharp, not overwhelming, just present, like a reminder that I was still learning how to feel without bracing against it. I lowered my hand slowly, letting it fall back to my side. And this matters, I said, the words coming out softer than I intended, because I was not just asking him, I was asking myself, asking if I believed that my situation, my choices, my life, actually held weight beyond survival. He did not hesitate. Yes, he said. And there was no elaboration, no need to convince me, just that one word, firm and grounded, and I felt something shift again, deeper this time, because it was not about him deciding it mattered. It was about the possibility that maybe I could start believing that too. I exhaled slowly, my shoulders relaxing just a little more, the tension that had lived there for so long loosening in small, almost unnoticeable ways. I do not know what I am supposed to do with that, I admitted, because honesty felt easier here, less like something I had to defend. He moved into my line of sight then, not blocking the window, not taking away my space, just standing where I could see him clearly. You do not have to do anything yet, he said, his tone steady, almost quiet. You just have to stop thinking you have no choice, and that was the moment it landed, not all at once. Not like a revelation, but like a slow realization spreading through me, because I had spent so long believing that every decision was already made for me, that every outcome was something I had to endure rather than shape. I looked at him fully now, not avoiding, not deflecting, just meeting his gaze, and for the first time, I did not feel like I was being seen as something fragile or broken. I felt acknowledged, like I existed beyond what had happened to me, and if I do not know how, I asked, quieter now, because this was the part that still felt uncertain, still felt like a step I did not know how to take. He held my gaze without wavering, his expression unchanged but not distant. "Then you learn," he said simply, and there was something in that answer that felt different from everything I had heard before, because it did not assume failure, it did not expect me to fall back into old patterns. It treated growth like something inevitable, like something I was capable of even if I had not proven it yet. I let that sit with me, not rushing to respond, not pushing it away, just allowing it to exist in the space between us. And as the silence returned, it no longer felt like something I needed to fill. It felt like something I could stand in, something steady, something that did not demand anything from me except presence. And for the first time, that felt like enough. I did not answer right away, not because I did not want to, but because for once I was not rushing to fill the silence with something safe, something expected. I just stood there, letting his words settle into something I could actually feel instead of something I needed to react to. My gaze drifted again, not away from him, but through the space around us, taking in the quiet, the steadiness, the absence of pressure. And I realized how unfamiliar it was to exist in a moment that did not demand anything from me. No explanation, no defense, no immediate decision, just presence. I stepped back slightly, not to create distance, but to breathe, to think, to let myself exist in that space without shrinking. My hands moved instinctively, brushing lightly against my arms, not gripping, not holding on, just a soft reminder that I was still here, still grounded, still in control of something, even if it was small. "I think I understand," I said slowly, my voice quieter, not uncertain, just careful, like I was testing the shape of the words before letting them settle. He did not interrupt, did not push, just watched, waiting, and for the first time, I did not feel like I was being evaluated. I felt like I was being given time, real time, to find something that belonged to me. I turned toward the window again, but this time, I was not looking for an escape. I was looking at the reflection, at the person standing there who had walked out, who had said yes, who had chosen something different even without knowing what it would lead to. And I realized something that felt both small and significant at the same time. I was still here, not because I had nowhere else to go, but because I had chosen to stay, and that was new. That was something I had not allowed myself to claim before. I left because I could not stay, I said, more to myself than to him, the truth of it settling as I spoke it out loud. "But I stayed because I wanted to," I added. And that part felt different, heavier in a way that made my chest tighten, not with fear, but with awareness. I turned back to him then, meeting his gaze without hesitation, without looking for permission, just standing there as I was. "I do not know what comes next," I admitted, because that part was still true, still uncertain, but it did not feel like something that needed to be solved immediately. He nodded once, that same controlled movement, like he had expected that answer. Like uncertainty was not something he feared. "You are not supposed to," he said, and there was something almost reassuring in the simplicity of it. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding, my shoulders relaxing fully this time, not just a little. Not just temporarily, but in a way that felt real, like something had shifted beneath the surface, something deeper than just the moment. I glanced around the room again, but it did not feel like I was trying to memorize it anymore. It felt like I was accepting it, accepting that this space, this calm, this version of myself standing in it, was not something I had to question at every second. I took a small step forward, closing the space between us just slightly, not out of necessity, but out of choice, and that difference mattered more than I expected. "Thank you," I said quietly, the words simple, but not empty, not automatic. They carried weight this time, intention. He held my gaze for a moment longer, and something in his expression softened, just enough to notice, not enough to change who he was, just enough to show that he understood what those words meant. "You did this," he replied, not dismissing my gratitude, but redirecting it. And that made me pause, because part of me wanted to deny it, wanted to give the credit away, to place it anywhere but on myself. But I did not. I just stood there, letting that possibility exist, that maybe, just maybe, I had more control over my life than I had believed, that maybe I was not just someone things happened to, but someone who could decide what happened next, and as that thought settled into something real, something steady, I realized something that felt like the beginning of something I had never allowed before. I was not waiting for the next moment to hurt me. I was waiting to see what I would choose to do with it, and for the first time, that felt like power.